warm welcome. You're watching The Big Focus with me, Griha Atul. Let's start this broadcast with some breaking news that is coming in on the top story that we are tracking on the broadcast at this hour, which is to do with the turbulence that the flight SpiceJet witnessed yesterday. So this is the Mirror Now exclusive on the SpiceJet turbulence. DGCA's preliminary inquiry report has been accessed by Mirror Now and actually take us through the inside details of this particular report. This has been exclusively, remember, accessed by Mirror Now. I'm now joined by my colleague, Heena Gambhir. Heena, what does the report say?
Well, firstly, let's tell you about the condition of passengers who got injured. So there were 195 passengers in this particular aircraft that flew from Mumbai to Durgapur. This incident happened yesterday in the evening. The aircraft took off at around 5:15 in the evening. Now we've got some important details. As I mentioned, there were 195 passengers, 2 pilots and 4 cabin crew members, out of which 14 passengers and 3 cabin crew members got injured due to turbulence that was reported. Now, we are also being told that 3 passengers are still in the hospital. 2 of the 3 passengers who are still in the hospital getting themselves treated are in the ICU. So it's a very, very serious issue that we are talking about, because remember, we all have traveled by air. We all have faced turbulence. But what happened in this SpiceJet flight was a bit scary. That's what the visuals are suggesting to us. Now, 2 statements have been issued by SpiceJet already. Minister of Civil Aviation Jyotiraditya Scindia has also put out a tweet ordering investigation in this particular case. And now this is the first, set of information we have got from DGCA exclusively to Mirror Now. We are being told that the passengers who got injured reported head, spine, shoulder, forehead, as well as facial injuries. 2 of the passengers are battling for life. They are in ICU right now. One had head injury, the other passenger got spinal injury. So it was indeed serious. The DGCA team, which is probing this particular issue, is also there. And oxygen panels opened up, oxygen masks fell off. This is what they found later. And now action has been taken as well, pending investigation, which is still going on. We are being told that DGCA has off-rostered the involved crew in this particular flight. Apart from this, the aircraft maintenance engineer who had released this aircraft from Durgapur and the in charge of maintenance control center of SpiceJet has also been off-rostered. So action has been taken by DGCA pending investigation. But what happened in this flight yesterday was very, very serious. 2 of the 3 passengers who are still inside the hospital are in ICU right now. This is the first set of information that we are getting for you. We are also being told that during the turbulent period when the aircraft witnessed turbulence, at that time the autopilot got disengaged, and for about 2 minutes and the crew was actually manually flying the aircraft. The autopilot function was not working for about 2 minutes. So what really happened, that so many passengers got injured and it became a nightmare clearly for these 195 passengers who were traveling. All those details will be out following the final investigation, but initial action has been taken by the DGCA. Back to you.
Absolutely. Heena, thank you so much for all those very, very important details. Remember, Heena Gambhir has accessed this exclusive report for us. These are inside details of the SpiceJet incident. She, in fact, has told us the 2 out of the 14 people who were in fact injured in this particular incident are in ICU. This is actually a big development that is coming in from this particular story. In fact, the DGCA report also talks about the crew that was involved in this particular flight. That crew has been de-rostered. All this coming out of this report that has been accessed exclusively by Mirror Now. So DGCA has off-rostered the crew involved, the aircraft maintenance engineering who released the aircraft from Durgapur and in charge of the maintenance control center of SpiceJet pending investigation. So all these details is something that we are picking up right here on the broadcast. Remember, this is our top focus story right here on 7 p.m. this evening. And it is, in fact, about this unprecedented incident that happened on board the SpiceJet aircraft. In fact, this is the mid-air scare that we've been talking about. We are showing the visuals also on the screen. The Director General of Civil Aviation has now, in fact, released that particular report that has been exclusively accessed by Mirror Now. Initially, we had been told that the Aviation Minister, in fact, Jyotiraditya Scindia, had called for this incident, an inquiry that was actually called for. When it comes to this particular incident, he'd also branded this particular incident as unfortunate. And he had said that the matter was being dealt with utmost seriousness and deftness. Now remember, 14 passengers were injured after this SpiceJet flight from Mumbai to Durgapur in West Bengal was hit by turbulence, and some of those injured sustained spinal and head injuries and even got stitches. And now we have been told that out of the 3 passengers who are still in the hospital, 2 of them are in the ICU. Now, to discuss about this unfortunate incident that really came to light yesterday, mid-air turbulence for a SpiceJet aircraft, I'm now joined on the broadcast by Mr. Vayan Sharma, who's the CEO of Chimes Aviation, and also Mr. Parvez Damania, who's an aviation expert. Mr. Damania, thank you so much for joining me. I believe we will have to actually wait for Mr. Vayan Sharma to join us. There seems to be some sort of an issue with that link of his. But Mr. Damania, I'll come straight to you. Now, this is, a statement that's been released by the DGCA. The probe is underway. Or derostering crew, also talking about the injured who are in the hospital. First things first, earlier, we had already been telling our viewers that there were 14 passengers who were, in fact, injured. But SpiceJet continued to come out with one after the other statements that claim that there are 11 people who had been injured. So why this, the numbers, why were they so fudged? And why is it that the aircraft could not really come to terms with the kind of injury that the people on board had really sustained and really come to terms with it and then talk about it openly?
I think this is a very serious incident and this should not have happened. I do not know what has caused it, but I think DGCA should take very strict action. This inquiry is already started. The very fact is that 2 of the passengers are still in ICU means the injury is a very minor injury. And I don't understand if all the precautions were taken. Passengers were wearing the seat belts. If the cabin storage lockers were properly secured, how did this happen? Because normally, and another thing what I fail to understand is these aircrafts have very advanced weather radars. If they were going to come across a very bad weather, the weather radar should have really clearly indicated there is very bad weather ahead. Or the airport should have informed the pilot that the weather is very bad and to divert to do whatever technically was required. So in spite of this, such a bad situation arose. Thank God nobody died, or I hope the people who are in ICU get well soon and get discharged soon. But definitely a detailed inquiry should be done. How the autopilot should disengage for 2 minutes, why was it not working? These are really serious engineering faults that need to be looked into. As it is, DGCA is very alert as far as the maintenance of the aircrafts in India is concerned. So I do not know how this has gone so badly wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Damania, while the preliminary report is, out with us, and my colleague Heena also took us through the contents of that particular report, parts of which you've already mentioned when you have actually responded to the initial statement. But I'd also like to understand from the perspective of, let's say, SpiceJet, when they went ahead and released that statement claiming that people, despite, having those seatbelt signs, they were still not seated, the seatbelts were not on people. Don't you think that onus also lies with the passengers to actually adhere to these safety precautions which are put in place on the aircraft?
Yes, but if you remember, once the seatbelt light comes on, the air hostesses walk through the entire aircraft to see that all the passengers are wearing the seatbelt. They go through the aircraft seeing that all the seats are upright and all precautions are taken. So again, I fail to understand if all the passengers. I think a lot of injuries have occurred due to the upper cabin hold, baggage hold opening up, and I think luggage falling down. So these planes, they have very, very high safety standards. It was a 737-800. It's not a very old, outdated aircraft. It's a currently manufactured aircraft. So technically, they're very strong. I'm sure the baggage holds have a system which should not open up and baggage should not fall even in turbulence. So now, in spite, because aircrafts do go through turbulence, it's not very rare that aircraft go through turbulence. But the baggage hold opening up and the baggage falling down, and I read somewhere in some of the articles that some of the seatbelts tore. I mean, that is very shocking. I've not heard of such a thing happening. I mean, the turbulence must have been really, really bad if the seatbelts tore and the baggage, cabin baggage opened up, hold opened up, and all the baggages fell down. I mean, it could have been more serious. Thank God, it's under control, and I hope no untold long-term injuries occur to anybody. But SpiceJet should really investigate.
All right,
a very
Mr.
serious
Damania,
matter.
in fact, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Damania, in fact, stay on with me. I'm also now joined on the broadcast by Mr. Vayan Sharma of the He, in fact, is from Chimes Aviation, is the CEO. Mr. Sharma, we were, taking stock of this very, very important aspect of when an airline really goes ahead and releases a statement after this particular, an incident such as this that has been reported from SpiceJet being embroiled in an on-air turbulence. Putting that onus only on the passengers, do you think, the airline could have been a little more empathetic towards the people? Because remember, we're talking about 14 people, including the cabin crew, who had actually sustained severe injuries. These are head injuries. Also, one of them really sustaining a spinal injury. And now we are told that 2 passengers are in the ICU. Don't you think that statement could have been avoided?
Ma'am, the connectivity is a little poor, but I'll just respond to what you said. See, obviously, no airline anywhere in the world or any operator that matter who has, which sort of puts the customer down. Having said that, you can't walk away from facts. The basic point here is that, the pertinent question here is that the got injured. Let me at the outset say I wish everybody has a full recovery.
Right, Mr. Sharma, we seem to have a problem with your network there. We'll try and fix it. Otherwise, we will get Mr. Sharma on the phone line. Mr. Damania, Mr. Sharma was trying to make a point there. I'll actually pose the same question to you. Here we are also talking about the number of passengers which was actually reported by SpiceJet, claiming that they were just about 11 passengers as opposed to 14, who in fact were injured. This is obviously inclusive of the cabin crew. Do you think SpiceJet should have been more forthright with its statement and also shown some sort of empathy when it comes to reporting of the injury that the passengers suffered? Because obviously nobody has a control on on-air turbulence, but actually releasing a statement, really putting the blame only on the passengers, that could have been avoided.
We cannot blame the passengers at all. More empathy should be shown. SpiceJet should have taken full responsibility for the incident instead of blaming it on the passengers. I'm sure all the passengers know that seatbelts are to be put on, and I'm 100% sure all the seatbelts were on. Even if they were not on, it was the job of the air hostess to go through the entire aircraft. See, the seatbelt sign comes considerable time before landing. So during that time, the air hostesses are supposed to walk through the entire aircraft and double check if the seatbelts are worn. So I'm sure the air hostess,
but that's true, Mr. Damania. But don't you think the onus is also on the passengers to follow the norms and probably for their own safety, just adhere with at least the basic, which is the seat belt?
Yes. It is very. Of course, the passengers should have worn the seat belts, particularly to take off and landing. Not only is the announcement made, there is a sign on top which says seatbelt sign comes on, and you were supposed to wear the seatbelts. And I have no doubt that the passengers must have worn the seatbelt. But I think what has really happened, the turbulence is, see, first of all, let the inquiry come through. What will happen? Did the really seatbelt store open? Were the injuries just caused due to the baggage falling from top? So I think a DGCA inquiry report should be studied, and your channel should follow up on the report and find out really what happened and what is the cause of the injury to the passengers. But yes, SpiceJet should give statements in a more responsible manner, understand the situation, and then see that the statements would not hurt the sensibilities of any passengers.
All right, Mr. Damania.
But this definitely hurts the image of the airline.
Mr. Sharma is back. All right. All right. All right. I'm told that we can't seem to actually connect with Mr. Y.N. Sharma. Mr. Damania, I'll just take this last question from you. Do you think an audit here is required of SpiceJet? Because now that the DGCA probe is underway, we already have that preliminary report. Do you think these safety clearances that you're talking about, where there are some reports, like you just said, where the seat belts really tore, that was the kind of massive turbulence that was witnessed? Do you think all these also need to be actually taken into consideration, including the baggage enclosure really opening up and the luggage falling down?
The aircrafts are technically very sound. I don't understand how this could have happened. See, the seatbelt tearing, I do not know. I do not have any information. This is what I read in one of the reports. So I think now I think we are just jumping the gun. I think we just have to wait till a DGCA report comes. And I think what you should do as a responsible channel is, once the report comes, to another story on why this happened and who's responsible for it. But if the airline's responsibility, airline should be taken to task. And if the passengers did not listen, one must be more careful. Air hostess should be more careful. See, the passengers listen. I saw the air hostess is running up and down after the incident. So I do not know. In an airline, procedures are laid down in writing for everything. For the air hostess, for the pilots, for everybody. So one has to find out if that procedure was followed or not followed. If the procedure was not followed, then what action should be taken is what DGCA should look at.
Okay. All right, Mr. Damania, thank you so much for joining me on the broadcast. I think we seem to have Mr. Sharma back on the broadcast. Mr. Sharma, I'll just take a final comment from you. Now that the preliminary report has been accessed with us here on the broadcast, and we have actually told our viewers about what really the DGCA really has come to gather from the inquiry that is currently underway. They have de-rostered the crew that is involved, and also told us about the kind of figures of the people who were injured. And of the 3 passengers who were still in the hospital, 2 of them are in the ICU. I'd like your final word on this. Don't you think the airline could have been a little more empathetic in trying to actually come out with the statement and not really just pin the blame on the people who suffered injuries, because these are, after all, connoisseurs and also consumers who are flying the aircraft?
Okay, ma'am, I would just like to bring everybody up to speed on how the rules work on this. When there's an incident, the crew operates politically de-rostered. So it's not that they have been found guilty or whatever. It's a primary thing that moment something like this happens, they are de-rostered till the time the inquiry is completed, right? So anybody as yet, the AIB, which is the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, which will bring us this, is a competent body which will look at all the facts, do their investigation, and then come to a conclusion on what happened. What I was saying earlier also was, ma'am, that here, the pertinent question is that the people, did they have their freedom or no? See, all of us have traveled numerous times in aircraft, and whenever there is turbulence, I think all of us have seen that sign come on mid-flight of, seatbelt, sign comes on, and the pilot makes an announcement that, he could be about to experience turbulence. So everybody have your on. Unfortunately, because we see the sign, and now people tend to ignore. I'm not saying this is what has happened right now, but this is what probably, this is one of the things which could have happened. Then comes the point, what you
Okay.
PR people, how they handle it. And what do you call, if, they just point blank turn around and hit the passenger, so I think it's bad PR on their part. But, the facts will speak for themselves when DGCA does the inquiry. One point I heard when you were, that with the crew, they've derouted the engineering people at the destination airfield. The aircraft had actually taken off from Bombay and was supposed to land at the other airfield. The maintenance crew there were has been deroasted. I find that a little strange. The incident has happened. The aircraft was cleared from Bombay, so I don't understand why the engineering crew at the destination airport, unless until they, after some damage had happened to the aircraft, they cleared the aircraft for an onward flight, which is a separate chapter altogether.
Okay.
Yes, when something like
also,
this
Mr.
happens,
Sharma, before I let you go, I'm sorry, you have a bad line. We are not able to actually hear you correctly, but I just wanted your inputs on the preliminary report that we've accessed, which also had mentioned that the autopilot was disengaged and the flight was really being operated manually for that time.
Ma'am, whenever there is a sudden change in attitude, which is when the aircraft is on autopilot and there's a sudden change in attitude or altitude, the autopilot, the pilot take command, and moment he stabilizes the aircraft, he puts it back on autopilot. So nothing very strange or out of the ordinary in that.
All right, Mr. Sharma and Mr. Damania, thank you so much for joining me with all your inputs. Very important one at that. Remember, we have now accessed a preliminary report by the DGCA, which really mentions that 14 people on board that ill-fated SpiceJet flight were in fact injured, and out of the 3 people who were still in the hospital, 2 of them are in the ICU. An important update there coming in from that preliminary report that we have accessed exclusively for you. On that note, I'm slipping into a very short break here on Mirror Now. News and updates continue on the other side. Stay tuned for more.